in 3, in 2, in 1, and here we are. We're live. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Intelligent Disclosure. We're doing a live AMA here. It's March. God Almighty, March 24th, 2020. We're in the middle of it, guys. We are in the middle of all the craziness, the meltdown of the world. And we just thought, you know what? Rather than go back to, say, the 1950s and the UFO cover-up, or some crash retrieval story, let's keep it real. Let's keep it current. And we can talk about things that are on your mind, whether that's about coronavirus, the implications of that, societal, political, economic, financial, or anything to do with UFOs or anything to do with anything else that's on your mind. That's what we want to do today. Mm-hmm. Just like to have a little sense of community. Things are so nuts out there. We're all stuck in our houses, most of us. And I think this is probably a good idea for us to do.
Yeah, I think so too. So, usually I'm not so much in the chat these days, but I am going to watch the chat. I'll be working with Pursuing X. And if any of you see Kirsten in there, we'll be watching for your questions. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we're going to do our best. And we're going to try and have a little bit of fun and just ease this whole situation that we're all in a little bit.
Tracey's going to have some fun. I'm going to be dead serious and probably not much fun. I'm just going to start off, actually. This is, I'm not going to lie, it's a stressful time. It's stressful on every level. Even if you're living with people you love, and my kids are in the other rooms here, we're with each other 24/7. There's no escape. You don't get out. If you're doing this the way that I think and the way that we think you should be doing it, which is, yes, stay indoors, let this thing run itself out. But it's tough. And not everyone, we can tell in our society, agrees on what to do about this. That could be within families. That could be among friends. And that's certainly in our little alternative type community where I'm just going to vent here. Just let me vent before we do anything else. I am really starting to lose my patience with a certain number of people in this field, and you can all play the guessing game. How about that? I'm not going to do names. Who will use this opportunity for their own massive gratification of their ego to talk about how they got the whole thing figured out. That's a big part of it. Or for people who actually truly make this about them. They're out there. Or other individuals who are just plastering the airwaves or the YouTube waves with, it's all a hoax, it's all fake, it's all a false flag, to, create the police state. And I've got no patience with all of these people. And as we go through this, you can hear me give all my reasons why, but it's running thin, people. It's really running thin. I'll just address the last part first. I mean, the ego, the people trying to turn themselves into gurus, you can write their names down. You probably will be correct. But the last critique, that it's all a false flag, we really do need to look at this carefully, all right? Most of us, lived through 9/11, and we all know how we were just completely lied to and hosed by that event. It was very obvious to many diligent researchers in the quick aftermath of that there was something wrong. And within a few years, it was a large community of researchers. And now we're 20 years into that whole post 9/11 nightmare. And I think most thinking people realize, yeah, that was a big pack of lies, and it created the ultimate false flag to turn our world into a police state. So we've all lost trust with our political institutions. We've all lost trust with our media, rightly so. Rightly so. But now I'm hearing people say the virus is simply a plan by the elites to keep you all inside and to chip you. Bill Gates with his vaccine is going to microchip your health. And make no mistake, a lot of that nasty stuff is going to happen. It's going to happen. But this is what I'm saying right now, all right? This virus is not a game. This virus is not a fake. This virus is not a hoax. It could be totally man-made out of the level 4 bioweapons lab out of China. Probably, All right, there are arguments about each permutation of this, but yeah, probably. Was it done deliberately, or did it come out by accident? I don't know, and guess what? You don't know either. No one out there really knows this. Could very well be man-made. But the fact is, it's out, and it took, what was the first, from 0 to 100,000 total infections that we know
67
about?
days.
67 days. And then the next 100,000.
11 days.
11 days. From 67 days to reach 100,000, another 11 days to reach 200,000, and then
it was three or 4 days.
4 days to reach another 100,000. All right, so that is what we call exponential growth, and that is no game. Now, fortunately, the mortality rate is lower, or it seems to be lower than what it's like when it was coming out of China at 3.4%. That was outrageously high. It now seems you get people basically saying 1%. No one really knows. In Italy, it's really high. In other places, it's high. Elsewhere, it seems to be lower. Let's just say 1%. So that makes it 10 times more deadly than a flu and way, way, way more contagious. So that's where we're at. I have a family member who's in an incubator right now in an ICU, and I'm sure many of you have people now that you know where this is happening to them. This is very widespread, and we're only beginning. So again, I've got no time for those people who are like, no big deal. I'm just going to go out. I'm going to do my thing. Flights are cheap, and I'm just going to go kill grandma because I don't really give a crap, and I'm fine, and I'm just going to let the hospital system get crushed in a tidal wave that it cannot handle. I got no patience for that, and I have really very little patience for those people who are absolutely convinced that they know everything about how this started and that they know it's a plot by the elite. Newsflash, everything is a plot by the elite. Everything is used by those people with power to manipulate the world for their benefit. That is absolutely true. But that doesn't mean we should not be doing everything possible right now to stop this in its tracks, because the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get. Okay. Rant over. Got some questions? You want me to say anything? I'm just rolling over here.
I mean, it's like for all of you, right? I mean, we're hearing this all day long, all the time. And, we want to touch upon it, but we don't want to, keep going with it. So, if we have some questions about it, that's fine. But mostly, why don't we try to, spread out the questions in the other areas as well?
Absolutely.
So first question I'm going to mention is from Jenny Mimon.
Hello, Jenny. And?
Why did you guys switch seats?
Well, we're in the new office.
We're in a different room, right?
So the collab office that we've been using, that's in use now. I have a daughter. We just got her back from France. That was a whole maniacal drama.
Some of you have heard that story.
Some of you have heard about it.
Just went down.
So she's back here. So she's got that room. So this is our office now for this. And I got the mouse. I'm controlling the mouse, and that's over here.
It was
Tracey
just easier.
wants his. There you go.
Yeah.
And question answered. Next.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What do we got? Glad your daughter made it home, from Todd. Mike Jones. Richard, I have a question. Dr. Joseph Farrell brought up the idea of an Earth being quarantined. Fun and interesting idea. Any thoughts?
Wait, of Earth being quarantined?
Of the Earth being quarantined. I think we would need a little bit more.
Oh, from other beings, or from other. If that's the
information there.
This is an old idea. The idea is that we human beings ourselves are being quarantined from the rest of civilization because we just don't have the ability to deal with them. If that's the question, that's not just Joseph Farrell. That's way, way before. I mean, my goodness, I used to hear Stanton Friedman talking about this, and Jim Mars.
So you're not talking about the prison planet idea. You're talking about something different.
Well, different, yes. The idea that our species is intentionally being kept separate from the rest of the galactic society that is out there. I'll just add that over the years, I have come to believe that there is very likely such a community. I'm not saying they're nice. I'm just saying it's a community of non-human beings that are probably all around us. And that our infrastructure, our society, yeah, I think we're kept at arm's length right now. And it's not that I think we're being, that they're afraid of us, but I think, well, I don't pretend that I know what the power structure is like beyond Earth's orbit, but I do think that there is a tremendous amount of secrecy, both within the human power structure that does know about this and these other beings, that maybe it's something as simple as don't let the kids have access to the matches yet. It could be that.
Okay.
If I'm reading the question right.
Okay. Yeah, we need some, I know the chat is moving fast, so it's not easy for people.
I see a TTSA question in there.
Yeah.
How do you believe TTSA, can you read that?
Are going to handle the virus in terms of their so-called schedule for disclosure this year?
Well, I don't really think that there is a disclosure by TTSA to disclose anything. First of all, what position are they in to disclose? They're not a government agency, and they're not a CIA front. I cannot keep saying this over and over again. People say, oh yeah, well, they're just a CIA front. Show me the evidence, please, other than the fact that some of them work for the CIA. That's not evidence. All right. They are a private group. They are getting hammered by people who hate them within the Pentagon, within the intelligence community. All right. And within the media too. And they have a lot of knowledge collectively. They do. They've had briefings individually, many of them. So they know things. They absolutely know things. But the question is, what can they actually disclose? They've got a couple of interesting pieces of metamaterial and artifacts that even if they were to show this to the world, which they started the process of showing these to the world, right? Magnesium bismuth sample and so forth. And it's really gone nowhere. So I don't know about this so-called plan for them to disclose anything in 2020. And as far as the COVID-19, I can't imagine that they have anything more relevant to say about it than anybody else. There.
All right. Ready?
Yes.
Now, to the person who keeps writing this question, you might want to add a little more detail.
She's so nice. Canadians are by law ultra polite.
I know it's, you can only write so many things in the chat. I mean, you only have 200 characters, so it's not easy. But sometimes I just know that Richard's we may not get the answer right of what you're looking for if it's not in the question.
So we have here.
This is Zach Lancaster who keeps asking this question. Are you familiar with Hellier? What do you think about it? I'm assuming you mean him. Gosh, I would love to hear y'all's opinion on what's happening with that.
Don't know the question. I mean,
Thank you guys so much, because there's Paul Hellier. We assume that
different
you're talking
spelling
about, but
I
don't know if that's what you mean or if it's something else.
Yeah, I think he means not something different than Paul Hellier. So you may have come back.
Yeah, if you could just give more information, maybe we'll come back to your question.
I'd like to read that.
Okay. Should there be a one world type structure that could have stepped in sooner and superseded the individual governments?
This is from Dave Nixon.
What are your thoughts about that?
I think I get this one. It's a funny thing. My daughter was in France until very recently as a nanny. It's kind of she had a nice family she was working with. And while this is all breaking out, she was talking with the members of the family who were bewildered why the American response wasn't more dramatic. Why wasn't Trump federalizing the response? Why wasn't there this single unified American U.S. government response to this? And my daughter is a smart young lady, and she, said, well, look, a lot of it's in the hands of individual states, and there's some federal response, but there's a lot of state government. And this is really the issue within the U.S. and elsewhere. It's how much centralization, will people allow within the United States? How much centralization, how much federal response should there actually be to this? And, whatever you think about Trump as a president, this is not an easy position for him to be in, because you've got people on one side, people like Governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, where we live, who is pushing really hard and he's got some decent arguments, frankly, for why there should be a unified federal response to this. For one answer, one reason out of many, you've got pharmaceutical companies and medical companies selling equipment, limited supplies to states to the highest bidder. So New York's got to compete with California. He's got to compete with Washington. They got to compete with each other. And what Cuomo was saying, look, you need a centralized federal response. Okay, we can kind of get that for an emergency situation. Problem that everyone knows, this, we know this, is that once you start getting major centralized responses to these, that is a major new avenue of power to a very small group of people. And usually they don't give that up once the crisis has passed. And so it's a real genuine issue to worry about. And this is why, like a couple of weeks ago, I did a live stream on COVID-19. And all I was saying is, like, if you're a Westerner, unless you want a solution like they had in China, all right, where they had an authoritarian government come down and tell everyone, get in your homes, and enforce this through their 5G surveillance system and all of that, I assume we don't want that. But we have to deal with this. And so in a free society, at least that's what we like to call ourselves, we have to take responsibility for our actions. And if we don't take responsibility, then there will be an authoritarian response to do it for us. And that's not going to be fun. So we need to do this, get it done ASAP, so that hopefully we can move on and get back to a normal life. That's been my argument. But in terms of a supranational or pan-national response to this, I don't know how that would possibly work. Through the UN? That doesn't seem to be very practical to me. Right now, we're in a situation where, I mean, even look at the EU. They've had an absolutely incompetent response to this. All right, so they were, until just recently, encouraging all other nations not even to close their borders, for God's sake. And look what that did to Italy. It was absolutely suicidal. And I would be very quick to predict that this virus, this pandemic, is going to really hurt the EU. And frankly, I hope it does. I think the EU is basically a Soviet-style system of government without quite the level of oppression, but getting there. And I think it's a bad idea from the beginning, and I would love to see it break apart. That's me. Next.
Okay. Richard, what's your opinion on Bill Gates chomping at the bit with his virus tattoo?
He sure is, man. Bill Gates, this is a really weird position that we're all in. I think we can all recognize this. All right. Those of us in this community, we're the non-establishment, non-corporate community, right? We're the non-corporate media. We're independent. And we know better. And we know about Bill Gates. And we know that, the idea of some vaccines is probably a great idea. And in my life, when I was a kid, I didn't have any choice, but I had vaccines, and I'm sure we all did. And yes, there is a great concept to it. I think the problem that many of us have is we do not trust the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry that is promoting vaccine. The number of vaccines that kids get today is not even remotely close to what kids were getting when I was a kid. It's vastly more. And it's also very profitable. I mean, even if you do trust vaccines and all those toxins and mercury and whatever in your body, even if you do trust that, you can't possibly trust the motivations of these pharmaceutical companies that, all they're trying to do is make the world a better place. And who cares about their billions and billions of dollars of profit? So they're out to make the money. And so is Bill Gates and power and all of that. So yes, I absolutely distrust his motivations. Hey, I don't know Bill Gates. I've never communicated with him. I'm sure I never will. But I don't trust that at all. And this idea, he just did his own AMA, I think it was on Reddit, not long ago, like a week ago. And he was very open about this. He said, yeah, what we really need to deal with this is everyone's got to get their vaccine, and there's got to be a digital certificate, like a medical digital certificate that everyone has that will tell the authorities if you've had your vaccines or not, and with all the ramifications of that. So he is absolutely going full guns ahead to get this done. And no, I don't trust it one bit. But here's the problem. We have now gotten to a point where, all right, they're talking about a vaccine for this is going to be at least a year away. Guess what? You know what I think? I think it's going to be impossible for most of us to avoid getting this thing for a year. You can try, but the way that this is so infectious, you tell me a year from now if we all haven't knowingly had this. So we're just going to probably have our own antibodies, and hope that will be the way that many people probably try to avoid this. But we're getting into a lot of pressure now, and you can see it happening. So I don't trust it, but stopping it is going to be a huge argument, and I don't want to get in the middle of that one. That's just a no-win one. There's going to be too much pressure, legal pressure on people around the world to get a vaccine if they don't have the antibodies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I was saying this yesterday or the day before. I hope that there will be a test as well for people who want to choose that route and see if they have antibodies, at the very least.
Yes, absolutely.
The very least.
I mean, we should tell when Tracey was getting her green card to live in the United States, they wanted her to go through a whole array of vaccines.
This is the normal.
This is how it is. And we were like, are you kidding me? You'd had your vaccines when you were living in Canada, and they wanted to give it to her again. And we didn't want that. And just by a hair, you were able to avoid it.
Well, yeah, luckily I had a doctor who agreed with this and
said, if you have the antibodies.
Well, said, yeah, let's test you for the antibodies and see if you have them, and we'll make a case. And so we did that. But the doctor who signed off on it was very, very resistant.
Very unhappy.
Yeah, he was very unhappy that he was signing off on it. But
by law, he had to.
Yeah.
That was
because I had all the antibodies. So, yeah, I mean, at the very least, if we're looking at that type of situation, I hope that there's. Yeah, I was about to read that to you.
I like that question.
Okay, so this is from Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't more people in uproar or demanding more information after the Elizondo Tucker Carlson interview? It seems everything has gone quiet on that front.
For those of you who don't know, thank you for that question, Sonia. Back in May 31st of 2019, almost a year ago, in the ramp up to the series Unidentified, the TTSA sponsored show for the History Channel, Luis Elizondo was on Tucker Carlson on his show on Fox for like a 5-minute kind of a standard type of interview that they would do. But the thing about Tucker Carlson is he really is insightful on the UFO issue. And you can see this in all of his statements on it. He takes it seriously. Among mainstream TV journalists, he's probably the only one. And he asks intelligent questions, and he's always worth listening to on this. So he's got Elizondo on there. And at the very end, Carlson asked Elizondo whether the United States had recovered any of these, and he used the word aircraft, but he absolutely meant UFOs. So he was really asking, has the U.S. government recovered any UFOs? And Elizondo has this long pause, and he says, well, unfortunately, Tucker, my NDA, my non-disclosure agreement, prevents me from discussing this. And Carlson was ready to let it go. He said, okay. Elizondo paused again, and he said, but in a word, yes. And Carlson, I think I'm getting a little bit of the details off, but then Carlson says, wait, you're telling me that the United States government has in its possession recovered UFOs? And Elizondo said, yes. And that was the end of the interview. And it's like, good grief. And I agree with Sonia here. Like, you would think there would be a major uproar in the aftermath of that, and it's a whole lot of nothing. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, partly Elizondo is not an official government representative. He was a member of the Pentagon not long ago, but he wasn't when he made the statement. And it's just sort of fallen into, as an old friend of mine said, like a rose petal into the Grand Canyon. But I think this issue's not over. And I absolutely do believe we got to look at the long game here. And the idea of crash retrievals is not going away. I can tell you from my part and for our part, we're going to be revisiting a lot of key crash retrieval stories through the rest of 2020. And I really think that those of us who study the UFO phenomenon need to recognize that crash retrievals remains one of the key areas of discussion that we must not lose sight of. And, I've said this to members of TTSA and publicly. If I have one critique, well, there's several critiques you can make of them, but one significant one is that they, go on with this fiction, essentially, that we don't know what these UAP, these UFOs are. And of course they know what they are. And as a result, they don't talk about crash retrievals at all because, at least officially, because that gets you in a whole new territory. But what you find is individual members of TTSA, like Elizondo, like Hal Puthoff, and like Eric Davis, who's not part of TTSA, but he's close to them, have been very, very upfront about crash retrievals at various times. So this is an issue that we really need to push because it gets to the core of the UFO cover-up. It's one thing to say we don't know what they are. Yeah, I understand why they say that. It's all political, right? They've got most of the Pentagon establishment after them. They've got a very hostile media establishment. They have a very indifferent political establishment. It's like they've got to be careful with how they do this. I get it. But the fact is there have been crash retrievals. And it's very important. And yes, we need to keep pounding that drum. Good question.
Do you think after, this quarantine of people for, potentially 1 or 2 months or whatever it's going to be, would put us more in a place to accept a big disclosure event?
Well, I don't know. It's predicated on the fact that elements of the official U.S. power structure want to do a UFO disclosure. And I mean, I wondered if that was the case back in 2017 when the New York Times, their mouthpiece, put out a story on it. But I don't see it. I don't see the U.S. government pushing it. Could be wrong, but I just don't see it. But I do think there's going to be a lot of repercussions from everything that we're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even gotten into the economic ruin that is on the horizon here.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just look at the social distancing, the isolation. It's going to make changes. Like those people who are looking at a lot of these negative effects, like they're exactly spot on. Because what's happening is we are, whether it's, I feel it is necessary to fight this virus that we do this, but it is also true that we're not meeting in person. We're not having eye-to-eye contact. We're not doing the things that human beings traditionally should be doing to build a community, to bond with each other, right? And that weakens us. That further atomizes us. And that does make us much more susceptible, more vulnerable to the next big idea that those people in power may have to monitor, to control, you could easily see this as a great justification to roll out 5G comprehensive even faster than before, right? That's a no-brainer. And with full 5G implementation, with smart devices everywhere, you have no more privacy for the rest of all time, ever. That's it. End of story. And the fact is, sorry to tell you this, guys, but that's happening. Like, you try to fight that. I don't know how to fight that. I ask myself this question all the time. Tracey can tell you. And I get mad about it and I get frustrated about it. And the fact is, what do you do about it? How do you stop this? And all this COVID epidemic is going to do is it's going to speed that up in the long run. It's going to create a great justification for it. But does that make COVID a false flag? Like, that's really the thing. Does that make it justified for each one of us to say, screw this quarantine, I'm getting the hell out? Because I see people doing that, and that's what pisses me off. Like, that's not an intelligent response to this, in my opinion. To me, the most intelligent response is stay inside for a couple of damn weeks, man, and just let this burn out. And then we can get back to our lives and arguing and fighting and working with each other more quickly. Mm-hmm. That's what I would like to see. And the more you get these, there's very few people out there, and we know some of them are very well known, and they just are blowing it off. And it's like, great, because like you're slowing down every one of us to get this thing done.
Yeah, well, I think what's going on a little bit is some people are distrusting of even the numbers that are coming out. And so I was seeing that a little bit in the chat that people just don't even trust the numbers. I mean, some of the numbers are, a lot of the numbers are floating, as we know, right? Because they change every single day. the number of people infected
Well, the thing
keeps
about
going up.
Yeah.
The death toll is moving all around. I mean, so there is a moving target.
I don't understand what they mean. I don't trust the numbers. That doesn't sound like a really smart response to me. I'm just going to be honest here. All right. You got a lot of numbers being thrown around. You've got Johns Hopkins over at their site. They've been tracking this from the beginning. All they're tracking are confirmed cases. Everyone knows that's not an accurate number. We all know the number is 20, maybe 50 times higher than that.
Mhm.
No one has a clue how widespread this is, except for the fact that it's vastly more. And there's a lot of very intelligent analyses, I can't go through all of this now, that explain why it's vastly more. All right? It's not a plot to say, oh yeah, we're fudging the numbers here or there. Yeah, China probably was fudging their numbers. Absolutely. We can all see why. We can all understand why in the US we don't have any testing kits practically. Europe, it's not just the US, Europe doesn't have enough. No one's got enough. Africa doesn't have enough. And so how do you know? No one knows. We're flailing in the dark here trying to get these numbers. So to say I don't trust the numbers doesn't mean anything to me. That's a literally meaningless statement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's move on to something.
Someone here, I want to answer this.
Okay.
Mark Anthony says, I think Earth should be a one world government. Do you? Let's talk about this. I had a colleague, I don't know if he's still...
Get your drink, get your coffee. Here we go.
I really do want to talk about this, just briefly. One world government. Okay. I had a friend, I think he's still around. He's a great guy. I'm not even going to mention his name. I spent a couple of evenings at his house about 10 years ago, and he shocked me by being a total believer in one world government, the Bilderbergers, Council on Foreign Relations, all of that. I'm like, what? I was astonished. I hadn't met anyone in our field who was like, yep, I think David Rockefeller is a wonderful man. And he actually literally said that. And so it really got me thinking. And here's the thing. I don't believe in that type of a scenario. So let me just make that very clear. But you have to understand why some people do believe in it. And I think it's a really a short-sighted view that a lot of people take. And everyone does this. Democrats do this against Republicans. Republicans do this against Democrats. Alternative community people do this against establishment and vice versa. And it's just like, stop for a second. Because a lot of people are much more complex than these little cartoon versions that we create in our minds of people who disagree with us. So those people who support the so-called one world government, whether you go back almost 100 years to people like H.G. Wells, who wrote a book called The New World Order back in 1940. All right. The people who lived through the First World War, you start there. Those Europeans lived through the absolute meat grinder of human flesh, where millions and millions of young men were just wasted away. They were just killed by the millions. And then the Spanish flu, the influenza epidemic, which in large measure happened because of the military conditions of First World War. That's a whole other story. Killed many millions more. And so you had an entire generation of young Europeans who were very disillusioned by war, by nationalism, and who said, look, we need a new system here. We can't live like this. After World War II, with the failure of the League of Nations and the nuclear weapons and many more millions, how hard is it really to understand an idealistic generation thinking we need to have a United Nations, we need to have a system by which nations work together? It's really not hard to understand that, is it, honestly? Combined with the fact that globally, economically, financially, the world had become more and more integrated, all right? So when you have all these big transnational forces economically, the argument could easily be you need a transnational political force as well to manage that, okay? It's a really good argument. The problem that I have had with this new world order, and by the way, that is a phrase used explicitly also by the Rockefeller brothers, that is Nelson, Winthrop, David, and all those guys, for years, to create that. That was the phrase they wanted to use to describe the world that they were trying to create. My problem with that new world order, that one world government, is that it's owned by those guys. It's owned by them for their benefit. And if you look at even the Bilderberger minutes and bylaws, that group of people is explicitly designed to further their own financial goals. That is the interest of the corporate interests that they own. That's what it's about for them. So it's a one world government really owned by a very few people. And sorry, but I'm not signing on to that. So, and will we ever get a just international global governing system? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm going to guess probably not ever. I just don't think human beings work like that. So for me, I put my hope in the most realistic form of sovereignty that we can have in this world, which is as local as you can get it and having it still be effective. So if that's the nation state, then fine, have it at the nation state level, some measure of sovereignty so that leaders are responsible in theory and hopefully in practice to citizens. There's not going to be any perfect system, guys. So like, don't become a utopian. Don't become like the left utopians and don't become like the right utopians. You okay there?
Yeah.
It's not Corona.
Excuse me.
I don't like left-wing utopians and I don't like right-wing utopians.
Excuse me.
The left-wing utopians are like, wow, there's an elite out there and they own more money than I do. And therefore everyone should have the same. And there should be no, like, stop it with that. That's embarrassing. Don't embarrass. That sounds like, you're in your sophomore year in college and you're starting your new college club and you expect the whole world to believe like that. But the people on the right who are utopians equally think like, any form of centralized control is going to be evil. And it's like, come on, like, let's live in the real world here. And there are, we live in a complicated world. The smartest statement I've heard in the last several years on the complexity of our world was by Jordan Peterson, who, yeah, I'm a fan. And he said something like, look, you think you can just go and fix the world? Really? World's complicated. Try fixing a helicopter and making that better, and you'll just make everyone in the helicopter die because you don't know enough. The global system's even more complex than that. So have humility and take a few breaths before you think you got the whole thing figured out. That's all. So one world government, there's yes, a theoretical logic to it. Can it actually work in practice? And I'm going to say probably not very well. But the fact is, how do you avoid it? And this is the era we're moving into. And by the way, and then we'll get into the next question.
Sure.
We're moving into a whole new era anyway, guys. All right. We're moving into the next big human era. Like it or not, buckle up. It's going to be called the transhumanist era. I don't like it any more than you do, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You go from 250,000 years from hunting and gathering to agriculture. That's a revolution. You go from 10,000 years of agriculture to industrial and scientific society for a few centuries. That's a revolution. And now you got this. So just try to stop it. What we've got now is a combination of all kinds of crazy things. 5G, AI, nanotech, bioengineering, quantum computing. Good grief. Just imagine, and that's just the beginning, how they're going to synergistically, if I can really use that word, work with each other to create a completely new civilization. Sorry, but it's happening. And give it another century and it's here. And that's actually all of the issues that we are seeing in this world right now are, in my opinion, as a result of this transformation that we're not even recognizing, but it's the fact. It's the fact. We're seeing the old world being worn away by this new order. Done. Next.
Alan's here. Hey, Alan. Just saying hi. Alan, New Realities there.
Oh, good buddy. Hey, Alan. How are you?
He said you already kind of talked about this after the illness is over.
Can we talk about the economic implications of the global shutdown? Yeah, no, we need to. So what we're looking at is, well, first of all, I'm not an economist. I'm not a financier. I will say I listen to economists of all types, and I really try my best to understand them. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, there's a lot that goes over my head, but there's a lot that I am understanding as well. So here's a big geopolitical picture to understand. Gold. All right. Right now, you've got, we've had a global economy. We never really got through the 2008 crash. Right? I think we all kind of recognize that. Crash happens. Lehman Brothers goes by the boards, Bear Stearns, but the other banks were bailed out by George W. and by Obama. They bailed out the financial institutions. Thanks, guys. Did us a real solid there. Use our money to bail out these corrupt kleptocrats who are just nothing other than rich thieves. But they did it. And in the entire system, this inflated system of financial hedge funds and everything related to all of the corruption of our global financial system, by which everyone in the market knows these stocks were overvalued. And so you've got this big bubble, and it was waiting for a pin, and that pin was called COVID-19. And we're now seeing massive financial fallout. And the real question is this the end of the dollar, the era of the dollar? And that includes the petrodollar, which oil is now going to hit $10 a barrel because you got Saudi Arabia and Russia going at it. Saudi Arabia started this oil war, by the way, but Russia's like, we don't care, because where Russia put themselves in a good position. Over the last 5 years, you've had a couple of nations getting as much gold as possible. Those nations were Russia and China, and they have a lot of gold now. EU's got a decent amount of gold, about as much as the US. So unlike 1944, when Bretton Woods happened and the United States created a new global order based on the dollar, because the US had all the gold and the dollar was pegged to the gold, that's gone. That is gone. When the fallout is done, you're going to see a truly multipolar financial global system. It's unavoidable. And it's going to include the evil Russians, who are not evil, of course, like the way the mainstream media tries to portray them. Not at all. But it'll be Russia, it'll be China, probably Europe, probably the US. That's what you're looking at. So that's big picture stuff. But how will it affect us in terms of, like, let's say if you're an American or if you're a member of the EU, how will it affect your personal wallet? Well, it could be pretty bad, because if you end up with a reset of the currency, it's probably going to hurt. Now, right now, what's an oddity that financiers we're kind of puzzled by is how during the stock market crashing of the last couple of weeks, a lot of investors were going to the dollar, and you start seeing people grabbing up dollars, selling off gold stupidly to get US dollars because they want that liquidity, selling off their silver stupidly to get more dollars. That's a real short-sighted thing, in my opinion. Really short-sighted. If you're able to find gold anywhere, which good luck, you're not going to find it, go get it, or silver, because we're really looking at a reset of the global financial system. Guaranteed, those guys at the top will find a way to benefit from it, absolutely. But we're going to be looking at major economic fallout. That's not even talking about the unemployment. US was at 3% official unemployment. We're going to go to 10, 20, higher. Who knows? This is bad, and it's going to get worse. And when you have that many people out of work, now you're going to get into Great Depression potential levels. This is not 1987. This is not 2008. As one analyst wrote, that ship sailed. We're looking at 1929 potentially. And the best thing we can hope for is that we make this fast and get it done, because otherwise we're looking at massive global fallout. And I don't even want to think about it, to be honest with you. It's just bad.
Okay, before we get to the next question, I just want to tell everyone that we're also going to be taking questions on Twitter. Just use the hashtag RDLive, and Pursuing X will collect those for us. So the next question I want to go to is from Lee Veltman. What do you think about Putin dropping the price of oil?
Well, it's not Putin, it's the Saudis and Putin. It's back and forth. So you got to look at this. Basically, what you have is Saudi Arabia started this whole nonsense a little while ago by thinking we have more oil than anyone else. We're going to collapse the price. We're going to drive our competitors out of business. The real losers is going to be the U.S. shale industry. That's it. And the Canadian shale industry. So if you don't like fracking, you can have a little party blower, party whistle, because the fracking industry is going to be Done. They cannot survive this. They cannot survive $10 barrels of oil. So that'll all go away. It's not Putin. It's the Soviets. It's Soviets. Listen to me. It's the Russians and the Saudis going back at it.
We've been watching too many.
We just saw this series called The Americans, which was kind of a neat series. Anyway, so really what you have to see with Putin is that he is, more than anything else, he is a classic nationalist in, I would say, a very positive sense for his country. You keep in mind, Russia during the 1990s was being picked apart by international finance under the tutelage of Boris Yeltsin, the national drunk, who allowed every outside foreign corporation to bleed that country dry. That's literally what happened in Russia during the 90s. It was terrible. And the Russian life expectancy actually plummeted. All of it was awful. Putin comes in 1999 and actually turned that entire system around. That's why they worship him there to this day. He stopped the fighting in Chechnya immediately. That itself was a miracle. And then slowly but surely kicked out the Russian mafia that was running that country and the Western-dominated money that was running that country. Western people have no conception of this. When you hear mainstream media bitch about Russia, about how awful it is, the level of ignorance is astonishing. It is absolutely astonishing to me. But people don't know any Russian history. They don't know any recent Russian history. And so they're just easily led like a ring through their nose by the corporate media to believing whatever they're supposed to believe about Russia. And it's embarrassing. Next. Oh, there was a young man who wrote, a 22-year-old who said,
I've got it right
should
here.
I read that
right
one?
Here. It's from Mike Jones. What can I do to stay positive about my future? I'm 22 and sometimes I feel like I have no future. And
then he said, not to sound like Greta Thunberg. Look, I've got 2 kids who are about your age. All right. 23 and 21. So there you go. I feel for your generation a lot. You got to understand. And I know your generation, I know friends of my kids and I really care about them. They're good people. And you guys are born into a tough situation, but you got to keep in mind something. All right. It's not uniquely bad, but every bad situation is unique. But what I'm saying is every era of human history, every single one has had horrible injustices, horrible, difficult challenges, really, moments where you've got to be very tough. You've got to be tough in this world. And that's what I would say to you. Like, I don't know, and you don't know, and no one here knows what we're really going to be dealing with in another 10 or 20 years. We can see vague outlines maybe, but people who try to predict the future always end up being wrong, pretty much. So I'm not going to try to play that game too much here. I will say it's a difficult world that you're moving into, and you're going to have to find a way. Best thing you could do is learn how to think independently to the maximum extent possible. That doesn't mean, it so means don't believe everything you hear, obviously, but it also doesn't mean knee-jerking it. We got a lot of people in the alternative community. That's what they do. They knee-jerk their way through. So in other words, whatever I hear coming from this source that I don't like, I'm going to believe the opposite. Don't do that either. Like, you got to take the time and think things through. It's hard work, but it will really make you into a much greater person than you ever thought. You do the work, and over time, it will start paying benefits. And what you're going to have to do as you get older, you become a leader yourself. That's really what it comes down to. Because with the knowledge and hopefully with enough courage that you will develop over time, you're going to, to your shock initially, you're going to find other people looking to you for answers. And that's a shocking development when it first happens, but take it seriously and take it with responsibility, and you just do your best. That's all anyone can do. A couple of years ago, I remember going through a difficult time, and I read some very interesting books on Zen philosophy, and they were really helpful for me. And, I'll just say, with a proper understanding of that philosophy, what was most beneficial to me was the recognition that no matter how you try in your life to create this perfect environment where everything is the way you want it to be for the rest of all time. Like, I'm just going to get this nice house. I'm just going to get this nice partner. I'm just going to get this good job. I'm just going to have this particular situation, and then I'm going to keep it forever. And that's going to be my life. And like, of course, what you learn, of course, that's not life. Life will never be that way. You may get that nice person. You may get that nice job. But the fact is that every life ends the same way, my friend. We all die. And your friends will die. And your friends will disappoint you. And you will disappoint your friends. And it's just how it is. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what do we do about this? Right? What do we do about the fact that life is not going to turn out the way you want it to? The fact that you're going to have tragedy thrown at you, right? Well, what you do is you just have to learn to recognize that this is what the universe is. And the fact that you have existence right now is actually a wonderful gift, because you just as easily might not have it. It could be gone. We have existence right here. We have this world. We have these interactions. And for me, the best way to go through this life is to recognize the beauty of every single individual moment that we've got. And you max out each moment. You do your best and recognize that they're going to be, you get ups, you get downs. That's the way it is. 1,500 years ago, a very brilliant man named Boethius was thrown into a prison by the new Gothic king who had just overthrown the Roman Empire. And Boethius was a really smart guy. He had been like at the top of Roman society, and here he is rotting away in a prison. Last 2 years in his life before they clubbed him to death. But while he was in prison, he wrote a book called The Consolation of Philosophy. And, you know, he was trying to reconcile himself as well to the fact that life doesn't turn out well. It's like, why did this turn out so terribly? And he used this image of the wheel of fortune, Fortuna. You're on top of the wheel, but then guess what? The next thing you know, you're at the bottom. And the fact is, you know, it's always been that way. And that's not a defeatist thing to say. It's just the truth. So let's just recognize it and develop our strength as a result of seeing things clearly. And, you know, when the crisis happens, and we're in it now, let's just like agree not to make it worse for the people we love, not to make it worse for the people around us in our society. Let's be the person who makes it better. All right. There we go.
Love it. Okay. Just want to say hi to you all. I mean, these guys, I just want to show Richard the chat for a sec. So he's going to have a look at it here just so you can all see. And I just want to tell you a couple little things.
Wow.
One of them is if you say anything, like any, you put a swear word in your message, YouTube, this isn't any of us, YouTube is going to quarantine your comment. So just know that, that we might not even see it.
YouTube's going to self-distance your ass if you...
That's right.
I probably just got...
Yeah, so just letting you know that is not us. That's just what happens. So...
right. So if you see you're not in there, it's just because the YouTube school marm nanny state has decided that your language was not appropriate.
Yeah. There we go. Poppycock.
Yeah.
That got it too. So
that's Poppycock got zinged?
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, it's true. So I just want to show you what some of the people are saying. And it's always there's
great
Renee,
comments.
There's Hufarda, there's Stephen. Yeah, it's just really great to see you all. There's Sonia, Cryptical. Okay, so we're gonna go. Yeah, you guys got it there. So, anyways,
all right, we got anything else?
Yeah. Oh, we have so much.
Okay, hit me.
Look, they're doing it on purpose. Zach Lancaster, I just want to tell you because you asked the hell year question. When we said that, Michael from Pursuing X was like, "That's the show I told you guys to watch on." I forget if it's on Prime or Netflix. Because we always talk about, upcoming shows that we should watch. So sorry, we didn't know. And I was going to say we weren't familiar with it, but Michael reminded me he did tell us to watch that.
And this is not a show that I'm going to start throwing at things at the TV if I watch it, because I do that sometimes. I get a little testy with certain TV shows. Tracey will tell you.
Yeah. So
I do. I get a little annoyed.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a good one. And
if it doesn't try to preach at me, then I might be okay with it.
well,
like
I'm just
preachy
going to
shows.
say, even though we couldn't answer your question, thank you for the suggestion.
Okay,
and
good.
we'll put it on our list of one of the shows we want to check out. And I saw someone else said tonight is the season finale of Project Blue Book. So
We got to catch up.
I know we really do.
Okay, good.
Okay. So Saturdays, maybe this Saturday, we'll be back to doing a Project Blue Book show. Oh, so Trust Defy Mercy doesn't like it. So we'll see.
So someone just wrote here, if we handle this crisis with dignity and compassion, will the aliens come sooner from Gushing Cloud? I'm going to guess probably not. I don't think it'll make a difference.
Yeah, we'll see.
I just don't think so.
All right. I've got your words up huge so he can read some of them.
Yeah, good.
Okay. So let's go and pick one of the questions from the Twitter feed. We have 3 here from
Right.
hashtag RD Live. So we've talked about this many, many times, but it's a good question for people who are getting interested in the subject. Why do this is from Marvin Suggs. Why do UFOs crash? Why do you think? Why do you think
Yeah.
such advanced technology, you would think with such advanced technology that alien pilots would be better trained, or, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah. I've talked about this a number of times now. Keep in mind a few things. UFOs don't crash a lot. Even if you go through all of the long history of potential UFO crashes, how many have there actually been? So there's a really good book by my friend and colleague Ryan Wood, where he talks about UFO crashes, and he has, pardon me, up to I think 75 potential UFO crashes. Now, even Ryan would say, undoubtedly, not all of those were actual UFO crashes. He was just trying to pull together all of the apparent stories. But if you look at the number of cases that, like, you can make a decent case based on witness testimony and all of that, 10, 15 minimum. So let's say 15 UFO crashes have happened. You think, wow, that's a lot of crashes, starting in the 1940s or maybe even the 1930s till today. But is it really a lot, actually? I mean, we have vastly more airline crashes all the time. Now, we don't know how much UFO traffic is going on. Is there a massive infrastructure that is going on all the time that we have no idea about? I think the answer to that actually is yes. That's my personal opinion. I think there's a lot of UFO traffic that exists that we never hear about. So once in a while, some of them come down. Now, where are they coming from? Are they coming from outer space? I don't think so. If I were to guess, I think that there are bases right here on Earth, and I think they've had bases here for a long time. In mountains, under the ocean. Yes, both of those. So they're here. Why do they travel? I don't know. Do they visit from one alien city to another here on Earth? Maybe. Why wouldn't they? Things can happen. Are they infallible? Hell no, they're not infallible. No one's infallible. And keep in mind something else. In our history of human civilization, starting in the 1940s and 50s, we actually have begun to develop our own significant military capabilities. Okay, maybe we're not at their level totally yet, but I think it would be very foolish to think that human militaries, particularly the United States military these days, has zero capability to defend its airspace against unknown traffic. I spoke to a U.S. Navy person, U.S. Navy retired from the 1960s and 70s, who told me in some detail about a UFO that came down in 1962 during a series of events known as Operation Dominic. And I wrote about it in one of my books. But it happened during a series of nuclear tests. What he said to me is that before every single test, we're talking 36 high-altitude nuclear detonations between April and October 1962 in the Pacific Ocean. He said we had bogeys all the time before every single detonation, and they would always vamoose out of the way just before the explosion, except on one occasion. And apparently one of them got caught in the nuclear detonation and came down. So it was a freak. It was an act. It wasn't meant to happen, but it happened. things happen. And so objects can come down. It's not an outrageous proposition at all. So I think there's a lot of other reasons why I believe very strongly in crash retrievals, but the logic of it is, honestly, it's not that illogical. We have these very, very superficial suppositions we make about these other beings. Oh, well, they're so advanced. They can't possibly ever make mistakes. Who said that? Of course they can make mistakes. Of course things can go wrong. Next.
Okay. I'm just going to read a comment from Chad Williams. Mr. Dolan, I've been a fan for 20 years. This is my first comment. Thanks for the years of information from your #1 fan.
That's from Chad Williams. Thank you, sir. I didn't know that I could have any fan for that long a period of time, but I look back, I've actually been now a public person in this field for 20 exact years. My first book came out in 2000. And I don't think anyone knew about me at the time, but it's been a long, wild ride, and I've loved every minute of it. Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to show you again the chat so you can see what people are saying at the moment. He's looking. So Astro Stop just said, thank you, Moonbird. We can see that. Thank you. Astro Stop, Annie Jacobson says in her book, I've never heard this before, that the Roswell crashed vehicle was Russian with bioengineered small humans on board. Any comment?
Yeah, I don't believe that for an instant. No, when that came out, I just snorted to myself and thought, well, she has other things in that book that are very interesting and probably on point, but I don't believe it for an instant. Russian, 1947, that type of tech, bioengineering, not a chance, not period, a period, chance, period. So I don't know where she got it from, but there is disinformation all over the place, and I see that absolutely as one example of it.
Mark H. Hey, Mark H. Has Richard ever talked about or read about the nuke test in Australia where they identified beings, people on the launch pad they canceled?
Not sure, and I wish I knew about it. So someone send me some info on it, and I will do so. I'm going to do the question above it on how put off.
From Stephen?
Yeah, why not?
Stephen Badilla. Yes, he is on the list. He has been. So, is Dr. Hal Puthoff holding UFO secrets?
Answer, absolutely yes. Of course he is. Absolutely. Not just him, but since you ask about him, and let me just say, I have known and liked Hal for many years. And I've spoken with him at times in some detail about various UFO-related things, and then at other times, not in detail, because he gives what he decides to give, and that's as far as he goes. But absolutely, he knows a lot. He knows a lot. And the thing is, in his position and in the position of many of his colleagues as well, these are people who have been read into programs. They've taken oaths. They've taken secrecy agreements. Like they are not able to say every single thing that I suspect they would like to say. Can't do it. They're stuck. And I've talked to so many people who've said, well, they should just blow past that and for the sake of posterity, spill everything they know. And who knows, maybe they will do that. I can't speak for any of those people, but I can say I've actually pushed a number of people who I know have had clearances to be more forthcoming, and they're just not going to do it. One time years ago, Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, he had said to me something in private back in 2006. I've talked about this a lot. Back in 2004, excuse me, where he said, look, it's been known to me from 2 ultra elite sources who told me explicitly about the existence of alien tech and alien bodies. And, a little later, I said, well, can you just help me out a little bit here, point me in some directions? And he said, look, the people who came to me did so at great risk, professionally, personally, and to their families. And I've never forgotten that. So there's a lot going on with these people who have some security clearances, and they know something about the UFO phenomenon, and it's easy for me to say, well, just spill it. It's easy for you to say, just spill it. But we're not in their position. And I have no doubt that they are concerned for their loved ones as well. I'm just guessing here, but that is my assumption.
Okay, you ready for another
Yes,
one?
yes.
Okay. No, I'm going to swear. Okay, Dam asks, 'cause it's in their name. Have serious researchers ditched the extraterrestrial hypothesis for an interdimensional or ultra-terrestrial theory?
No, I haven't. I mean, I think I'm still serious, and I have not ditched the ETH, not at all. I do think that, and there are other people who definitely support the ETH. Absolutely. I think, though, what you want to do is, this isn't a 1950s extraterrestrial hypothesis. I think we need to understand that. So we're not talking about men or men and women in metal spaceships landing on Earth, like the day the Earth stood still with the whole take material leader approach. That's kind of silly. So we're not talking like that. We're not talking about how the early researchers like Donald Kehoe or James and Coral Lorenzen and others saw this. That's probably true. Like, in other words, their idea was, well, they must have just arrived. Maybe they're here to take over our world the way we took over North America. It's a big issue, actually. Because the problem with that is that we did discover this phenomenon behaved in ways that seemed beyond our science and in ways that we didn't quite understand. And that seemed like, are we dealing with dimensions? And there's all of this high strangeness, right? That people would start talking about even in the 60s. The way that time to a lot of people who have UFO experiences seems to move differently or seems to go in a different way than they expect. Like, how did I miss 2 hours of time? Or, and the idea of objects winking into or winking out of our reality, seemingly. And then there's the potential connections that some people see with the ancient phenomenon of spirits or angels or demons or whatever. So there's reasons to doubt a straight up ETH, extraterrestrial hypothesis. But having said that, what I personally believe is that I think that we're probably in this world of ours dealing with multiple types of very strange phenomena. I've come to that place in my life now. I think the UFO phenomenon is a distinct phenomenon that is not necessarily the exact same thing as all other paranormal phenomena that people may deal with. And when I say paranormal, all that I mean is a phenomenon that we do not yet fully understand scientifically. We have to keep in mind we have 5, maybe 6 senses, right? And that's how we perceive the world. And we have a brain that really works well, but it's not omniscient. It's not omnipotent. When I was 20 years old, I had the first really big insight of my life when I was feeding my dog. Forgive me if you've heard me tell this story, but it was a big thing for me. I was getting a can of dog food out for my dog, right? And he's watching me. And he's very smart. Dogs are smart. Like, they know what you're doing. When you get a can of dog food out, get the can opener, dog is like, he's ready to jump. And I'm watching him watch me. And then I put the food in the bowl and he's chowing down. And I'm observing my dog thinking he's very intelligent, right? He knew I was getting him dog food. He knows me. He knows a lot of things I'm not even aware of. Smells and sounds and right. But my dog did not know how that food got into the can to begin with. He doesn't know how they make dog food. He doesn't know that we had factories to make dog food. He doesn't know that he's been taken out of his natural environment to live with humans. He doesn't know that he lives in a human city. He doesn't know what the moon is if he looks at it because he's a dog, right? That's how his brain works. And I laughed. I thought, oh, gee, Richard, you think you're so smart. So your dog's here. You're maybe here. What's here? What's there? And it occurred to me, at that moment in my life, I was 20 years old. I was a militant, I was like an atheist, right? I thought belief in transcendental reality is just wish fulfillment. We just believe in God because we're afraid of dying and all of that. And I realized, my God, how arrogant for me to think that I had the whole thing figured out with my 5 senses and my very limited ability to figure things out. And is it possible to envision an intelligence that can see more than we do, that can perceive more? Well, yes, of course. And if they can, how good are we going to be at understanding everything that they're about Answer is probably not that great. We've got some abilities. We've got understanding of things like science, and it's a really great tool, and we need that tool. But let's not fool ourselves here that we've got this whole thing figured out. I just don't think so. We do our best, and at the end of the day, we're human beings. We live in a human condition, and we have to accept, my opinion, that we're going to know some things and we're not going to know other things. There we go. I don't know if that's a full answer to your question, but there you go.
All right. Are you involved in the History Channel effort at Skinwalker Ranch?
No, I'm not. If you're listening, History Channel people, bring me over. I'd love to take a look at that. We have a loose connection with at least one person who might have a connection to it. I would love to get into the Skinwalker Ranch. You kidding me? Now, I've had some pretty good conversations with people like George Knapp and other folks who've had some Skinwalker knowledge. And I've read Colm Kelleher's and George's book on it. And, you know, I know as much as a lot of people, but I would love to go to the Skinwalker Ranch. You want to go with me?
No.
Should
There's
I
a lot
just-
of mysteries
I'll
that I
Skype
would...
you.
I'll
Skype you from there.
There's a lot of, really interesting things I would love to go on. But I'm going to be honest, Skinwalker scares the crap out of me.
Does it? Yeah.
It really does. I don't know. I'd have to have some serious convincing.
No, I get that. I understand. I actually do want to go.
I know.
I would like to go. And this is an open request to any of the people who've got the power. I would love to go. I don't know what good I would be there, but I'd be very happy to go.
Yeah, maybe I would go to a neighboring town, but they have a lot of crazy stuff going on as well, right? There's a lot of UFO activity on top of the high strangeness that actually happens on the property.
Right.
And there's just so much in that area, and the history of that area is so fascinating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, digging into the older investigations. That is super interesting as well, but no freaking way. I don't know. Would you guys go to Skinwalker if you had the chance? I don't know. Like, that is some creepy, creepy stuff that no one seems to be able to control. The stories are outrageous. We haven't seen that Project Blue Book yet. That was on Skinwalker. I know they probably did that up.
They did it, and no, we have not seen it. So
yeah,
we'll
have to see how they treated that, and if you guys liked it.
Any other good ones?
Well, there's so many. That's the other thing I want to say. There are so many people here who we know, who are here all the time. I recognize all of you.
I want to answer this. Archaic Revival. What's the 1 minute lowdown on Skinwalker? Basically, Skinwalker Ranch is a place in Utah that was formerly, I think it was Paiute and Navajo rivalry was going on there. There supposedly was a curse, and essentially there's been a lot of paranormal activity at this location. There was a family by the name of the Shermans. They lived there in the 90s. They reported a lot of bizarre activities. We're talking not just UFO sightings, but animal mutilations and crypto sightings of strange creatures, and also poltergeist type activities. But the key is, I think it was John Alexander and Eric Davis, who both know a lot about this, characterize this as essentially a precognitive sentient intelligence that seemed to be operating there, and no one was able to figure it out. So during the 90s, Robert Bigelow, the billionaire or multi-millionaire, bought it and brought in a team of scientists from the National Institute of Discovery Science to study this and actually to do it right. And they spent many years there. And then they eventually sold it off. But then, as we now know, during the ATIP, the ATIP program under the Pentagon, Bigelow was the subcontractor to work with the Pentagon. And one of the main things that he was doing there was apparently studying the Skinwalker Ranch. So he's never let it go. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very interesting place on this planet.
I think I just saw Noodles said you have to interview Bob Bigelow. I don't know if I could see it properly because it was up there.
I would actually love to do that.
So nice.
I've never communicated with Robert Bigelow, and I would really like to. So that would be a really good thing.
The reactions are really funny. First of all, Mark H. Storm Skinwalker.
Yeah.
No.
With Naruto style running, maybe.
Yeah. Drew Stripeberg, I would absolutely go to Skinwalker Ranch. I'd camp there for weeks. You are crazy.
Drew.
Tim F, he would go to Skinwalker in a heartbeat. Academic Ed, no way, wouldn't go. Ed, Storm Skinwalker, oh, you guys are hilarious. No way.
We should do it, but
And Ken, you would go too, huh?
I'm going to try to get
All right,
invited.
you guys can all go. And Sonia said she would go.
If I get invited, I promise I will give as thorough possible report as I can. I saw Westall 66 in there.
Yes. There were a couple questions. I just want to say there are so many questions. That's where I was going right before we did that. Just wanted to say thank you guys are putting in so many good questions. I can hardly even keep up.
Kevin Cooper says hello from China.
Yeah.
Life is returning to normal. Hope we're all
Yeah.
safe there. Good. Good in China. That's good to
Good to
know that
hear.
that's subsiding.
Very good to hear.
Anything else?
Oh, there's so many. I'm just laughing at
we-
what these guys are saying.
Any others you want to pick here?
Uh,
I see
do
Ballet.
you want to do that one?
JAS. You want to read that one?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Jacques Vallée's connection between UFO and ghostly phenomenon?
I haven't lately given that a lot of thought. I know Jacques Vallée. I know Jacques Vallée, and I know his books pretty well. And I don't really know what Vallée thinks about UFOs these days. Does he believe in aliens? I can't speak for him, but I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I think he probably does. I think it'd be very foolish for him not to believe in them. So, Vallée has been very famous. He's an extremely intelligent man. He's been famous for decades and decades by arguing that the UFO phenomenon is way too strange to be something as simple as extraterrestrials. He said that a number of times. And even back in the 70s had a number of arguments against the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And I think rightly was looking at common ground between what we see as UFOs and ghosts or sightings of fairies and things like this. But I don't really know what he thinks about it today. And as far as myself, I see them as distinct phenomenon. Maybe there's overlap, could be, but I see them as quite distinct. I'm going to tell you a story, and you can think that I'm nuts, or you can think that I'm unscientific, or you can think, wow.
Story time.
About a year and a half ago, a year and 3-4 months ago, my father died. And I love my dad a lot. He was a month away from turning 80. He lived a good life, and he and I were quite close. And the moment he died, it was 150 miles away from me. I had spoken to him earlier that day on the phone. And I told him I loved him, which I was very happy that I did that. That was the last time we ever talked. But Tracey and I were on the living room couch, just working, side by side, laptops open, right? We had 2 recessed ceiling lights that were on a dimmer setting, very dim, in our living room. And the light, Tracey notices first, the lights start getting bright, then dim, bright, dim, bright, dim, bright, dim. Insane. Those are brand new lights. I watched it being installed myself. I got the wiring myself. We did the exact thing. It was exactly perfect. Rock solid lighting. Those lights are going crazy. Tracey's like, what is that all about? I said, I don't know. I got up. I walked over to the lights, very irritated. And I said, Brian should have known how this was supposed to be installed. What's wrong with him?
Mm-hmm.
And
Meanwhile, in all that time for me to notice it, tell him to notice it, to get up, to walk across the room, it's still going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I jammed the dimmer up and down a few times and turned the light on and off, and that stopped it. 15 minutes later, my sister called me to tell me that our father had died 15 minutes earlier. And I'm telling you, that whole thing happened the moment my father died. Now, okay, what does that mean? That's the question, right? And I'm not here to tell you what I think it means because I don't know. Is it some crazy coincidence? Well, I suppose if you are insistent on denying that there's anything beyond our ability to understand in the physical universe, then you could say just a crazy coincidence. But you know what? Sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying the coincidence. Just not. Now, What's even crazier, though, for me is to think, how the hell did my father do that? He was 150 miles away. What was that? Was that my father going 150 miles over the New York State Thruway like that into the wiring of my house, into the lights that we had just installed, to go into the dimmer and say, hey, Richie, take a look over there. Look at this. Is that what he was doing? It seems insane to me, right? But I guess what I am saying is that this is just chalk it up, throw it in the pile of yet another crazy thing that happens in this world, and we don't understand it. We don't understand it. So what are ghosts? Who the hell knows? Really, do we truly understand the physics of what that is? Even people who believe in it, like, they can't explain the physics of this. Not in my opinion. So there's something going on with this world, and we don't get it. And maybe we'll never get it, because maybe it's just like right beyond the horizon of what we can understand. Or maybe one day we will. That would be great. But is that a ghost? I don't think that was alien activity. If I were to believe in ghosts, I'd say, well, that was my father. But how was it my father? I don't know. So that was a story I was never going to tell publicly, because you know what? When you're a public person, to the limited extent that I am, who has a reputation supposedly I'm supposed to uphold, and I've got to be this scientific, rational person, and I got this crazy ass ghost story from my own father who had just died. Do I just not tell that to the world? Well, you know what? The hell with it. I'm telling the world, and whatever it is what it is. So, how about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing story. And there's a lot of people in here, and our condolences to all of you who've lost people. We all have, and they were sending their condolences to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's been over a year, and look, honestly, I miss my dad every day. I miss talking to him. I miss he was a one of a kind of a person. Yeah. You got to know him.
I was very
but he's in wherever he's in, it's better than where he had been the last few years of his life, which were not pleasant. And it happens to us all. It's the end of the road, maybe the beginning of a new road.
Okay, you ready for another one?
Yes, let's go for it.
So what do you think about sky gods educating humans, the legends of...
Well, I don't dismiss any of that. I mean, for your information, I don't really talk about this a lot publicly. Even though I've been on a couple of episodes of Ancient Aliens, I don't usually talk about the ancient alien part of this phenomenon. But I am going to say that I am a very avid student of ancient history and ancient mythology. It's just something that I've studied and read a lot. I'm very deeply interested in it. So the stories, the origin stories that so many cultures have, are of a lot of interest to me. And I ask myself a lot, like, what do these mean? Are we talking like an Eric von Daniken scenario? Is it ancient astronauts who've come to Earth? My opinion is only an opinion, and it's really no better than yours. I'm not pretending that I have special secret knowledge here. I don't have inside intel like some personalities in this field are constantly spewing hot air about. All I have is my opinions. My opinion is that from an ET point of view, from a UFO alien point of view, we have been monitored probably at a low level throughout our entire history. I say low level in the sense that I don't think, could be wrong, that there has been a tremendous amount of overt intentional influencing in our development. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've studied a lot of history, guys, and I don't think that's what I see. Now, it's possible that there is behind the scenes management. And I definitely think that there's been monitoring because we're interesting. I think the large scale monitoring and intervention started probably during the 19th and 20th century when it became obvious that we discovered the keys of the kingdom, that is science, and we're going to become a real hassle at some point in the near future, especially when we got nukes. But the ancient stories that you're asking about, I guess I would say this is a possibility that some of these are based on interaction with non-human high levels of intelligence. Yes. Totally possible. Whether they're aliens or not is another question. Are they from another dimension of reality? You got me. But I do think that there are other intelligences beyond what we ordinarily perceive. And I think that, yes, some of them might, I'm just spitballing here, guys, have made themselves known to our ancestors.
Ready?
Yeah.
Do you think they walk among us?
Yes. That's Dave Jacobs' thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. Do I know they walk among us? I wouldn't go that far. I don't know that anyone knows anything. But do I think? Do I think that there are human beings who the people who look just like us, who aren't quite like us? Yes. That's what I believe. And not just because Jacobs wrote a very interesting book on that theme, which, by the way, I think is a very fine book. And if you're deeply interested in abduction phenomenon, you really need to know that book, Walking Among Us. But also because in my own research, in my own encounters with individuals, I've encountered these stories as well of highly, apparently telepathic human beings who are just not like the rest of us. There's something different. So yes, I think that there is a faction of beings who look like us, but they're not like us. And then, of course, we can ask ourselves, well, how far back does that go? And again, don't know. Could it be thousands of years? I suppose, conceivably. Sure. I just don't know. And I get annoyed with people who claim that they absolutely know. I will say that much. Next.
Right. We can speculate, but we don't know.
Right.
Okay. Let me see.
I've seen a lot of references to the recent Grand interview with Sherry Wilde, so we got to go check that out.
I've heard Sherry's story before, but I know that you haven't. So,
well, I know of it. I know who she is, but I haven't really gone deep. And I know Grant just did an interview with her, so we could check it out. There's thoughts on RH negative people. That's from Merlin Wild. Yeah, RH negative isn't that roughly 10% of the population, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
It is argued, particularly by people who have RH negative blood, that there's something unique about RH negative blood that other beings, aliens, extraterrestrials, have a particular interest in. All I've heard is anecdotal information about it one way or the other. And I mean, the fact is, I know a lot of people who've had apparent experiences every bit as intense who don't have RH negative blood. So I don't really know where to go with that theory or if it means anything. So but thank you for asking. I'll keep my mind open on
it. Do you want to read this one or no?
What do I think of Dr. Greer's new documentary? Haven't seen it, but the word is that the pandemic was started because the powers that be were trying to distract you from watching it. So you can believe that if that's your choice. Not mine. Onward.
All right.
I'm not trying to start a fight here, but it's just like, come on, seriously. I have no aversion to watching it. And if I get the opportunity, I probably will watch it.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to watch it too.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. It's almost like we can spin the wheel here. We have so many because I think, are we going to get close to wrapping up soon?
Someone writes effing really. And let me just say, I'm hearing that secondhand. So if I'm wrong, then I apologize. But I got it out. I think from someone who I think knew what he was talking about, said, yes, absolutely. This statement was made. So
that's interesting. I've never heard this before. This is from James. Thoughts on why Tom DeLonge believes CE5 is dangerous and won't mention it anymore.
Oh,
never heard that.
I didn't know that either. I don't do CE5 myself. I'm friendly with a few people who practice it. And, I've gone all over the map on this one. It's been a long, many, many years for me to go over the map. So forgive me. I went through a period where I was intensely skeptical of it and saw only the stories where people were clearly seeing things that were satellites. And that's easy because that happens a lot. So you can't believe every single thing that you see is an alien spaceship responding to your thoughts. That's just kind of silly, guys. But is it possible that things happen? And look, I've spoken to people who've said to me, they've been adamant, this absolutely happened. And I trust the judgment of some of these folks. I did a couple of CE5s. I had friends who said, come on, let's go do it. And I did what I thought was my best. It's like I didn't have a bad attitude. I thought nothing happened when I was there. Maybe they avoid me. I don't know what it is. But the friends that I have had who talk about it are actually extremely positive about it. So it's interesting to me that Tom DeLonge would say that they are negative or dangerous. That's kind of like with a lot of spiritual perspectives, isn't it? You know, you have people who will engage in certain activities that they feel are spiritual, that other individuals will say, no, that's not spiritual. You're engaging in demonic communication. Get the hell out. Don't do that. And so people have different perspectives on this. And I can't speak for Tom DeLonge. So, but it's entirely possible that if you're of the opinion, all right, that at least some of these beings are not your friend, then you might not want to just open the door and say, hey, anyone out there, let's communicate. Like maybe that is a bad idea, right? Maybe it is. What if 90% of those beings out there are really cool and really good, and 10% are, are criminals, interstellar criminals? Is it impossible? It's not impossible. Absolutely not impossible. I actually laugh when I hear these people saying, oh yeah, well, because they must be good or they would have destroyed themselves by now. If they're able to master interstellar, yada, 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 yada. It's like, are you out of your mind, man? That would be like if we go back in time. We go back to like ancient Greece and we've got our little iPhones and we've got our smart technology and our little laptops and our nice clothing and all the other cool things that we've got. And yeah, our translation devices. And they would look at us and think, oh my God, these people they're so advanced. They must have solved all of their problems. They must have solved all of their social problems and learned how to live in peace with each other. And we would just look at each other like, don't say anything. Because like we know how screwed up we are. Advanced technology is not even the beginnings of proof that you've got a spiritually advanced or ethically sophisticated advanced civilization. Are you kidding me? Come on, let's get real here. Why wouldn't there be interstellar economic hitmen? Why is that impossible? Why is it impossible to think that any species that develops, that was once upon a time a predator, right? If it's biological, then it's either predator or prey. Sorry, but that's the truth. We are predator species because we have eyes that are in the front of our head that are perfectly designed for having binocular vision to have depth perception to kill our prey. It's what we are, guys. Get used to it. It's in our nature. Doesn't mean we have to lean into it and kill each other all the time, but it does mean we have an aggressive element to our character. And by the way, that's a good thing. You want to have aggression in your nature. You don't want to be totally passive because you'd be dead. You've got to have some assertion, some aggression. So why therefore is it impossible to think that another species, which may have evolved somewhere else, would have zero element of aggression, would have zero element of a sense of superiority over other species? Like, is that really difficult to imagine? And yet for some people in this field, that's impossible. I just think, what are you, like 9 years old? Like you have no experience with the world? Not even 9, that's like 3 years old. That's like thinking everyone out there is your friend, is good. And to me, there's nothing more foolish in this world than that type of an attitude. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And you've had the toxin of new age ideology, which has just made it worse, honestly. Think positive thoughts and then all good things will happen. And if we only, invite the good in and only good will come in. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. That's not how this world is. So anyway, there you go.
All right.
Alistair, I love passivity and will fight anyone who says different. Well said.
Alistair. Okay. All right. You want to?
Anything else?
You want to leave these? Yeah. Okay. I've got another one.
How long are we going to go, by the way? We're doing 90 minutes. We've done that.
Oh, yeah. We've done 90
a little
minutes.
longer.
We're kind of just having some fun. And
normally,
we don't usually do this.
I'm normally the hard ass about wrapping it up at this time.
I know.
We'll go a little longer.
Sometimes. Because Let's see. Okay, I want to do this one. So I just want to say there's so many good questions. I'm sorry. We can't get to them all, but it's great and it's fun having you all here in chat. It really is. It's awesome. But we're going to take one from Twitter this time from hashtag RD Live from Dr. Rich Nilsson. How on earth did the community not rally around the Admiral Wilson leaked document?
God.
So much that can be done, especially unified. Still holding out hope that the community focuses efforts and quits being so cliqued. What did he say?
In such cliques, I assume.
Yeah, and divided. Yeah, we know what you mean.
Thank you for that question.
This was a good opportunity to make a push. Yes.
It's not over. Thank you for asking that question. And yes, it is maddening to see.
There are other people who were asking. So this is for all of you that were asking about Admiral Wilson.
There are some. You got different types of people who are resisting this. Some absolute dum-dums who just don't know any better. Then some people who just wanted to apparently make a name for themselves by being contrary and thinking that they're smarter than everyone else. It's got to be a setup. It's got to be another MJ-12. It's like, stop embarrassing yourself. And then there's just people who are so, this is understandable, jaded by year after year of false hopes, right? More new documents coming out. It's like, I don't know what to trust anymore. And so it's not even being jaded, it's being afraid. What I found among most of my colleagues in the UFO field is that they actually just were afraid. When I would talk to them privately, typically, I would say 90% of them were like, oh yeah, I know that's for real. Of course it's real. Like, all you have to do is read it, really. Unless you're actually sub-intelligent and you think you're super intelligent, and then you think that you can actually study that and you get everything wrong and you put out an analysis out there that's total bullshit. So there's some of those people, but generally most researchers who've studied that document know damn well it's real. And I am telling you that I know absolutely that it's real. And I'm just saying I do. But the game isn't over for that. All right. It is a very, very critically important document. And I can tell you that there is some very good work currently being done on that document, not by me, but I'm privy to it to some extent, but other parties are doing some deep dives into it. And I know that information will come out at some point. I don't know when, but that game isn't over. And it's if the world could have heard some of the conversations that I have had with some of the people close to that document, I mean, I just wish I could relay it, but I'm not going to. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, even if it makes my life more difficult, because I sure as anything would love to get past this and get an actual full official, everyone saying confirmation that it's real. Jay writes, why does Admiral Wilson deny it? Of course he's going to deny it. I'm going to tell you a story. Back in 2006, just before I called Admiral Wilson on the phone, I was preparing this. I was getting all my ducks lined up in a row. I had known back in 2006, all right, that he was the person involved in that document that I was shown, which is the Admiral Wilson document, notes written by Dr. Eric Davis. All right. So just before I call Wilson, I ask someone who's in on this, any advice on things I should ask and all of this. And I got a couple of helpful things to say, but basically the idea was like, don't expect him to give away the game here. And I'm like, absolutely, I don't expect it. Because if he was to admit, all right, that he not only had the meeting with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and Stephen Greer and the rest, and now, as we know, Commander the Navy Commander Miller, who was there as well, and a few other people. But not only that, to admit that, but then to admit that he tried and failed to get access to an ET-related black budget program of reverse engineering alien tech. For someone in his position to admit that publicly, I was saying back in 2006, that would be enough to maybe bring the House of Cards down. That would be enough to admit we have a deep, clandestine, black budget cover-up that is beyond the control of the United States government. This is one thing Stephen Greer got totally right, in my opinion, which is that this is beyond the scope of the U.S. government, deep special access program. Greer's not the only one who said this, of course. Anyway, so I went into this knowing Wilson was probably not going to admit it, but I thought, hell, I've got to try. And the only time I've ever done an ambush interview call in my life, I did it to Admiral Wilson. And no, he denied everything. Of course he denied it. And he's denying it today. Why would he deny it today? Well, for the same reasons. A, he's got security clearances. He probably has more and better clearances now than he did back then in private industries with Northrop. They bought his company that he was in. So I don't know, but you have to assume he's got significant deep clearances. And these people are not going to give it up. Not ever. That's how the system is. And Eric Davis, for his part, he's in a similar position. It's like it's a situation where it's an open secret, but really, really very open, but still officially unacknowledged, and they're not going to acknowledge it. Probably not ever. So, next.
I was just looking at what Egyptian princess wrote. POTUS talk to ETs in our government.
Our ETs in the senior executive services. I have no idea. No idea. Not a clue.
Okay, let's see.
There are UFO researchers who will tell you that they talk to ETs all the time. You can believe that if you choose. Anything else?
Oh, there's so many.
I saw a QAnon thing in there. Is there a QAnon discussion?
Yeah, there was a QAnon question.
What do I think
earlier.
about QAnon?
Yeah.
I'll just have a hand
Let's leave
at
it at that. That will cover a lot of people too.
QAnon's been going for a long time now. And first thing I'm going to say is there was a time when we threw ourselves into it and really tried to get up to speed on everything that was happening. And I spent a lot of time, and it's quite fascinating. It's quite fascinating. I will not deny it.
You and Joseph Farrell did a good interview discussing it. It wasn't a deep dive, but it was a good look at it.
And at the time we were on the same page. Is it on our members channel? Or is it public?
That's public.
That's YouTube.
But I mean, that was a while ago. So
yeah, and I mean, I think Joseph and I, it's fair to say, we both thought it's interesting and it's worth reading. And I definitely felt that at the time. I don't know what I think about this anymore. I think that the interpretation of Q about Trump is totally wrong. I think there's no truth to this. I will say the whole deep state the whole existence of a deep state, that's real. The deep intel community. Yes, it's obvious they've had it in for Trump. That's obvious. We can all see it. The FBI, yes. The CIA, yes. What's funny to me is the Democrats who hate Trump are now kissing the ass of the CIA and the FBI, whereas in prior generations, they were always very critical of CIA and FBI because that's, good liberals don't like the national security state. But since, the deep national security state hates Trump and they hate Trump, they will kiss CIA ass until the cows come home. They just do it. Real smart guys. The fact is that they were after Trump and may to a certain extent still be after him for two reasons. You have to understand this, all right? Don't get sucked into the partisan arguments here. He's great, he sucks, he's great, he sucks. Don't do that. You have to see this clearly. Trump became public enemy number one among the establishment for two reasons. Not because he's a racist, not because he's a sexist, none of that. Stop, don't even go there. It's irrelevant. He became public enemy number one from them because he opposed the two pillars of American global policy, right? Don't you get it? He opposed neoconservative empire. I mean, he was talking smack against the war in Iraq, against the war in Libya, the destruction of that entire nation in 2011. He actually talked against all of that. He was right to do so. He talked against all the military options and so forth. And so that's sin number one. Right? I mean, even Bernie Sanders wouldn't go there. And then the other thing he did, of course, is he talked against neoliberalist globalization, which was the other great sin, like thou shalt never criticize that. He was an anti-globalist. So, of course, if they're going to put him in their crosshairs, and they're going to try to take him down. Why is this so surprising to anybody? It has nothing to do with personality. But of course, what you have is a corporatocracy that can't say that. They can't be so open about it. So they'll go after the easy, low-hanging fruit. Oh, he said this horrible thing. He said that terrible thing. Did you hear what he said yesterday? It's like, oh my God. So the point is, why did I get into this whole thing? Oh, QAnon.
Yeah.
The Q people are convinced that Trump is the white knight who's going to take down the deep state. Okay, that's a great theory back in 2016. That was a cool theory in 2017. He's like, wow, is he really? Well, guess what, guys? He's not. That ship sailed as well. He's not taking down the deep state. He is surrounded by all the Wall Street people, all the neocon empire people that Hillary Clinton would have been surrounded by. There's no difference. All right? There's no difference than with Obama. Fundamentally, not a whole lot. There's some difference. I will acknowledge that. All right? He hasn't started any major new wars. That's like check mark in his. Of course, he's escalated some that we've had that I'm not too happy about, but basically what you have with him is just another president. Sorry, but that's the case. If he's playing 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional chess, well, he better make a move soon because it's just not happening. So, in the latest Q thing, and I'm going to confess here, I gleaned it, okay? So I didn't go deep, but it was like Tom Hanks was supposedly part of the setup. They're going to make more major arrests. Correct?
Well, I thought it was when Tom Hanks was being quarantined with Rita, his wife, for Corona. There were going to be these mass arrests, and they were going to be arrested there, and it was a cover-up. That was really what was happening. But then he got released from the hospital or wherever he was being held, and life was back to normal.
So is that the case, guys? Because I think that was supposed to be part of the Q narrative. Maybe I got it wrong.
Unless we're wrong, that's what it looked like to us.
I'm tired of hearing like the mass arrests are happening, the $1 trillion arrests are happening, and again and again and again. So it's like, I'm done, man. I'm done. It's very intelligent. It's either an op or one hell of a prank, man. They're either brilliant trolls or it's an op. Either way, I've stopped paying attention to that a while ago. So I consider it a waste of time.
Matthew, you're funny. Tom Hanks is guilty of not doing a good movie for 20 years.
He did Private Ryan. I thought that was pretty good, but that's over 20 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting question that I think we all know I'm going to ask you. From Bebo73. If an executive order declared secrecy concerning ET was unconstitutional and a violation of the oath of service enlistment, would it matter?
That's a great question.
I know.
I haven't ever thought about that. Could a president just issue an executive order? In theory, you might think that they can, right? I'll tell you a story, which I've told before, but hopefully you haven't heard this one. I interviewed a retired colonel with a variety of top secret SCI clearances who had genuine knowledge on the UFO phenomenon. And I'll just leave it at that. And he had told me of an interview that he had conducted to a man on his deathbed at a hospital at Manzano, which is very major weapons facility. Anyway, this person who was dying was an elderly man who had been at Roswell in 1947 and was there, bodies, the whole thing. And this colonel's telling me he was accompanied by security personnel. Obviously, he wasn't alone in the room with this guy. But they're talking, and he said he spoke enough to me that he convinced me that this was absolutely real, that he was there. He described the beings in a way that was consistent with what I had understood they were, and on and on and on. So they're chatting, they're getting on well. This poor man is dying. And this colonel asks him, or he actually just says, kind of offhand, he says, it's really a shame that people like you can't tell your story. The world really deserves to hear this story. And the colonel said, wouldn't it be great if there was a presidential executive order liberating you from your oath? Which is exactly this question here.
Yeah.
And the guy's answer was, he snorted a little bit, and he said, he said it would take a lot more than a presidential executive order to liberate me from my oath. And I asked this colonel, like,
That's interesting.
what do you think that means? I mean, I said, do you think that that means there's a power behind the president? He says, absolutely, that's what I think it means. The president's not running the show. So there's more than the president. Now, or there's power beyond. And honestly, the reason Trump is so unpopular with these people is because I honestly think that he thinks he's actually president. Like, that's his great sin. It's like everyone else who's gone in there since Kennedy, they all kind of know there's a certain boundary they can't go over. If they go over that, then the game's over for them.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that you can see that with all of them. You don't really get that with Trump. You don't get the idea that he sees that. This is a guy who doesn't know how to read a script. If you watch him on all of these recent press conferences, he's actually hilarious because you could tell this guy has not read the script first, right? Like with Obama, Obama could read it like a pro, and he could almost make you think that he was saying those words and meaning them because he's that good. With Trump, Trump's reading the script, and you can tell he's reading it for the first time because every once in a while he'll stop and he'll say, yeah, that's really true. I really agree with that. It's like he's reading it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
He goes off script all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He can't help himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually, I honestly think this guy believes he's president. And that's one more reason why so many of these people around him hate him. Because like he's not a team player. But he's fallen in line, honestly. He's got the neocons around him. He's got the Wall Street people around him. He's fulfilling all the same policies that pretty much that Hillary would have done, except she would have started a war in Syria, and he didn't do that. So that was one difference there.
Are presidents puppets?
Generally, and when they don't behave like puppets, that's when they get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have to be a team player. 40 years ago, I was a freshman student at Alfred University in a political science class, and I had a professor saying the United States is like a big ocean liner out at sea. It can change course, but it's got to be a real slow change. It takes a long time. And that kind of stuck with me. But honestly, the case is you've got a very powerful, entrenched series of interests, of bureaucracy, government bureaucracy, and you got private money that's behind it. Ton of private money. And that's the way it is. That's the system. We elect presidents. We don't elect dictators. Like there's only so much that they actually can do. And there's a lot of limits. There's a lot of limits. So, and then think of this. What does the president do in their daily life? They've got to get in front of the camera. They got to read speeches. They got to kiss babies. They got to shake hands. They got to meet with dignitaries. How much time do they actually have for formulating policy? Like very little. How much time do they have for managing the hundreds, maybe thousands of special access programs, deep secret programs that exist that are almost certainly all illegal, if you want to get technical, and who doesn't want to get technical? How many of those can he monitor or manage or get briefed in any significant way? Seriously. I mean, the question answers itself. So in reality, these guys, they come and they go. And you've got the deep state bureaucrats, they run it on behalf of the criminal financiers who employ them, and who they work for when they retire and get senior VP jobs making tons of money for them. There we go. Am I growing a sick mustache? Sick, dude. No, it's just a little darker than the facial hair down here. It's pretty much the same. I keep it like, I don't really go full out with the stash.
No. I kind of like it like this. Do you guys like it like that?
I do what Tracey tells me with the facial. I don't really care anymore. Years ago, I had a Facebook page. Well, I still have a Facebook page, but people would comment on my hair and my facial hair all the time. It used to make me laugh. But the fact is, I don't like to think about it anymore. When my wife says, get a haircut, I get a haircut. When she says, trim your beard, I trim the beard. It's simple. It's like, I don't care anymore.
Actually, I don't really do that with the haircut. You're like, I think it's time.
Yeah.
And I will say, Yeah, I think it's done.
Messy 10.
So-
Your wife's hot, bro. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that.
Okay, so I'm going to do something different again. I'm going to bring Richard's attention
Matthew
to hang out with
says-
you and chat a little bit right now.
Matthew
See
says
what
you've given up. I haven't given up. I just decided what's important and what I want to waste my time on. Okay, next. What did you want to say? I'm sorry.
I'm
interrupted
just
you.
saying, I'm bringing you right in to see what they're saying because we don't get to do this too often.
Grow hipster beard and fade haircut.
True.
Oh, yeah, man. I should like spike the hair, get a fake blonde kind of thing happening, right?
Some frosted tips.
Yeah, man.
Right? Remember that?
10 years ago, I was like, I should grow a ponytail and wear white muslin and crystals and beads. And I'd probably like, quadrupled people would follow me, talk to about my coyote spirit guide or something like that.
You guys have them in a mood tonight. That's right.
And I could drink craft beer. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I'm
Lang
just
Lee, getting older
letting
is
him
great,
just
isn't it,
read
Richard?
these. This doesn't happen very often.
Getting older, actually, it's great and it sucks. Like it does suck because the body just starts yelling at me more and more. That's the truth.
Yes to Dan
but-
Aykroyd. That would be cool.
What about Dan
You
Aykroyd?
should interview Dan Aykroyd.
Absolutely have
We've
to.
tried. We've tried. Maybe
Well-
in the future.
I'm going to try to figure out a way. But no, I like getting older in a lot of ways. I do. I do feel like it's a struggle as we get older. Here's the crazy thing with me. I have spent my whole life, I've been really lucky. Like I have actually spent my whole life studying things that I want to study. Like, I've worked, but I've also worked for myself. And I have never, I have thousands of books and I've read a lot of them and I've studied them and I've thrown myself into learning and learning and learning and learning. And I was lucky because I had a very excellent formal education before that. And I've got a very good self-education and I've got great friends to talk about these things with. And I'm focused, right? And I'm dedicated. And here's the frustrating thing. It's still hard. This is still hard work. Like for me, I'm 57 years old. 10 years ago, I thought and believed things that I don't actually think that I believe now. And I thought I had it going on when I was 47. And guess what? I've changed my opinion about certain things. So what does that tell me? If it's hard for me, we got neighbors here. I can tell you right now, none of our neighbors really seem to know very much about what's going on in the world. Maybe they'll surprise us, but I don't think so. And it's, to be fair, they've got jobs, they've got families, they got things to do, and they're not always inclined. Like it's not fair to expect everyone to be like throwing themselves into studying all the time. It's not a fair thing.
Yeah, and then you have to navigate through the layers and layers of truth and deception
It's
and what's
very difficult.
propaganda and what's not, and it's not easy.
So-
It's true.
I just tell myself, like, if it's hard for me, it's like going to be impossible for most people really to pierce through the veils of lies and illusion that are out there all the time. And then there's some people out there, they like, well, I like Richard Dolan. I think that I believe him. And other people say, well, I like this other person. And it's like, great. Like you pick the person that you want to listen to. And it frustrates me because I keep wanting to say to people, like, don't trust me, like trust your research. But then I come back to the reality,
Right.
like not a lot of people do their research.
And they know that you've dedicated your life to it. So, and I think it's good to have a few people.
Yeah, no,
know?
you have to. All I
and,
can,
and a few different sources as well that you trust or that have been recommended, and you have to sort through them still. I mean,
all I can say on behalf of myself is I don't pretend that I've got inside intel. I don't pretend that I'm going to predict the future for you, other than just like looking at trends. That's all that, like all of things that I talk about and that I think that I know are, with a very couple of minor exceptions, they're all open source. They're all things that are out there. And the only thing that I've done is I've just tried to synthesize it the best that I can. That's it. And I'm fallible. I'm as fallible as anyone else. So I would never want anyone just to say, oh, well, Dolan says it, so therefore it's got to be true. It's like, no, all I'm doing is I give him my best. I just give him my best. And if on a good day, I'll get a couple of things right. And on not a good day, I'll get a couple of things wrong. And I'll always reserve the right to be wrong because that's just how our world is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why I said all of that, but anyway, we should. I want to point out the time. I'm going to point this out.
This is actually what we do on the member site. We do minimum 2-hour AMAs, and we kind of just hang out like this. And it's a really small group, and it's really fun. It's just something that we do. And I just want to recognize Sean Maloney here, because I think this is the second time you've done this. Cheers for the quiet members. We still support. And it's true. You know, there's always vocal people who are used to sharing in chat. And then there's people who don't really comment in chat, but they're there and they're supporting. And I'm glad you wrote that. And we'd like to recognize all of you who aren't necessarily, throwing your name out there with all these questions, but you're supporting in the background, and just to everyone. So we just want to thank you.
I want to answer this question right here, because I think this is important.
Okay, this is a question from earlier. This is from Matthew Wilson at the beginning of the show.
Do you want to read it, or shall I?
Richard, if you don't trust Gates, you don't trust the government, the media, and the deep state, then why trust the testing or the mortality figures?
Or the mortality figures.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. And it's not that I trust per se any of that. What I try to do is evaluate the information that comes to me and make new assessments as I need to. So, for example, in the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak, I just stumbled across a Johns Hopkins website that had a compendium, or compilation rather, of all of the total confirmed cases. Now, did I trust Hopkins? I suppose I did trust Johns Hopkins on their numbers to the extent that they were getting official numbers. Did I therefore believe that was a complete total? And the truth is, no, I never think that I believed that at all. Maybe the first couple of weeks, I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know how much it spread. Same with the mortality figures. The earlier mortality figures of this were very, very high. And it is true that my initial governing assumption was that, oh my God, we're dealing with, not only is it hyper infectious, but it's got a 3+% mortality rate, which would be 30 times more deadly than a flu. And that's super scary. Now, it turns out over time, other information has come to me and has come to all of us, and that has caused me to revise my current assessment. The fact is, I don't know what the mortality number is. I'm thinking it seems to be 0.1%. It could be lower than that if this is much more widespread than it even appears to be. So it's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of you acquire as much data as you can from as many reliable sources as you can, and then you make your best assessment of it. It's not trusting an authority. It's never been about that for me. It's about making my own decision based on information that's available. That's it. And that's really all that science is, frankly. Bertrand Russell, who I'm a really big admirer of, wrote a lot of really cool books, and one was called Science and Religion. Back in the 30s, he wrote this. And he just said there's a fundamental difference between a scientific perspective and a religious perspective. And the scientific perspective, he says, is actually less emotionally satisfying, but in the long run is going to, he believes, will take you farther. The religious perspective argues that truth is revealed through spiritual insight, through God, or through some internal mechanism, like it's revealed. It's revealed to you. And therefore it is immutable. It's always the case. That can be very emotionally satisfying because, a lot of people, we want that rock of something to rely on. Of course, that makes it much less susceptible to revision under new circumstances. And that could be maybe its strength too. And what Russell says, science is totally different. Science, all truth in science is provisional. It's never permanent. Scientists, being human beings, sometimes act like their scientific knowledge is eternal, but reality is that science is always, knowledge is provisional, and it is always subject to being corrected when new hypotheses that have better explanatory value come along. Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly you got to revise. And honestly, that's all that I ever try to do. I try to have a scientific approach. So I will have information that comes to me. I do my best in the moment to decide, what do I think this is? That's my hypothesis. And when new information comes my way that seems reliable or seems good, that can be tested in some way or another, then I accept that. That's it. It's not trust. Trust is always the wrong word for me. You get information and you assess and analyze. And we've all got to do that ourselves. So we should probably wrap it up soon.
If you guys are enjoying this live stream, this 2 hour, which we have never done before,
not on
live,
YouTube.
not on YouTube, but we do it on our member site. But
we have, so that's a plug, a shameless plug. Join our site. A lot of other cool things there.
But what I was going to say is one very simple way to support Richard and his research that is absolutely no cost to you is to like and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, please.
And turn on notifications. And then you'll know every time we upload a new video. So always keep an eye out on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern because we will either upload a video or we will do a live stream. And maybe we'll do a few more of these. It was actually really, really fun interacting with you guys. So we're just going to look through the chat a little bit more just for fun right now. And John Bruno, thank you. He says, my research always leads me back to Richard. And then let's see, we go way down for, we just want to thank all the people that are here. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the people sending things in on Twitter. Thank you for the amazing chat family. You guys are awesome. And thank you to all the people who are here and watching and not engaging in the chat and just supporting. But subscribing to this YouTube channel is the easiest way to support.
Thank you. I want to say one last thing here. I don't know if we're going to wrap this up.
Let's keep going.
Maybe, but
he's tired.
Little,
you did a great job. Everyone was saying you're on fire.
Thank you.
And you were. You're on fire.
Well, thank you. I would like to say that, in all of these years that I've been publicly engaged in the UFO subject, and like it's to this day, it's still it's a weird thing for me to know, like there are people out there who are fans and who believe in me. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Mm-hmm. And I want you to know, like, I don't take any of that lightly. To me, it's a very serious thing. Mm-hmm. I like to, I will never, ever do the guru thing. And you know who I'm talking about. There are people out there who do that. And I hate that. And I will never do that. I will never do that. For me, I take any hope or any trust that people will have in me in any way, or even if they go to me for whatever reason whatsoever, just for information, I take that very seriously. And I'm not even gonna lie, like it's a burden. It's one that I'm glad that I have. Why is it a burden? Because when you realize that your words have an impact on a lot of people who you're never going to meet, a lot of these people. I'll never meet many of you. But knowing that I have an effect on it, that means that everything I say matters. And I actually really like that. But it's important. It's like, I don't ever want to say something trivial. I don't want to say anything trivial. I don't want to say anything that is just simply self-aggrandizing, or just because I'm trying to get subscribers to the YouTube channel, or even members to the website. All of that's great, and I do appreciate it. But this is not, like, for me, what matters is taking this responsibility seriously. Mm-hmm. And I just want all of you to know who have supported me for all these years, and now who support us, that it means a lot to me personally. And I'm very grateful for it. And I will never throw that trust away.
I think that's one of the reasons why, if you're new to Richard, I know a lot of you who are here aren't, he won't come out and, a lot of researchers will come out with the latest news, but Richard will actually sit back and mull over it and gather information slowly. So that's why we don't always come out with the latest.
We could get so many more YouTube hits if I were just to say, I want to follow this trendy topic, I want to follow that trendy topic. Like, we could have done so many more. And I can't do that. It's not in me. That's not the way I'm ever going to operate.
Just want to say 3D the Destroyer. I know you're always here, and you were asking about Ariel and Westall, and yes, we are very familiar with those. And,
we've talked at length about all of those cases.
We have, and maybe on another time we could talk about that. You know why? Because it's not a quick answer. There's so much to talk about with those cases.
The Westall case from 1966 in Australia is an amazing case, as is the Ariel school children case from the 90s. And yeah, I mean, the fact that you've got a large number of young people witnessing up close and personal UFO with adults who are, especially at Westall, who are there. It's very significant.
I'm going to just fit in a couple last. Mark DeCosta, have you ever talked about Martin Stubbs' third phenomenon, STS flights? I don't know what that is.
No, but I should. I'll thank you for the question. And let me say in the future, I'll hope to get back to that and provide a more intelligent statement about it. Every now and then, I'm going to say one other thing. People ask me what I think about other public figures in this related field. And it's very rare that I'll do that. I'll do it if I know that person on a personal level and I know them well and I have a reasonably positive relationship. But there's a lot of people out there that I do not have a high opinion of. But I also don't like to get into names. I'm not interested in having wars with people. But a lot of this is probably pretty obvious to people who know anything about me.
Nerdrotic. Thank you, Dolans. Try The Expanse on Prime. Oh, we've watched it.
The Expanse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not
Tracey liked it more than I did.
Says not preachy. Best sci-fi show going. Longtime fan. Thank you for bringing sanity to ufology.
Thank you. Now, here's my critique on The Expanse. This is one that's way too damn complicated.
I don't know if people know.
What the hell is wrong with the scriptwriters of that show? You got like 6, 7 major plot lines going on. Too much. I'm out.
I love sci-fi.
Otherwise, it was fun.
I watched it for different reasons than Richard. So we get into these little arguments about it. We have to negotiate for our shows. Thank you. Expanse was mine.
Beautifully produced. I'll say it's a very nice looking show.
It's a gorgeous show. But I mean, if you're watching these shows for high concept, I mean, they're amazing for that. But Richard has a more strict criteria. And so I am more forgiving. And
this is the old English lit major in me that's coming out. I'm like, you got to string together a good plot line, good character development. There are some good things about that show. I will not deny it. But as Tracey will tell you, that's one of the shows where I just incessantly bitched at a certain point as we got into the later season. I'm like, what's the show about now? It's like a completely new reboot again. It's like too many.
I still thought it was.
I saw 5G in there. Is that?
Yeah, there were some 5G questions. I
have not seen Picard. I'm almost afraid to watch any.
I will definitely watch Picard. I love Picard.
Star Trek, man, has just gone off the rails in my opinion. But okay, if people really want me to see it, I'll take a look.
Richard Tracey, do you like Post Disclosure World on YouTube? I don't even know who that is.
I guess we should check that one out.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have to check it out. Yes, there were lots of 5G questions because people are, there's a lot coming out with COVID-19 and 5G. So
I think what I'll say about COVID and 5G is you can see with this spreading, the vultures have I don't know if that's the right word. The predators have pounced. I mean, they are going to use COVID as an accelerated 5G rollout. They're going to use COVID as an accelerated vaccination program. I think we can see this. This is very clear writing on the wall. And they're going to use COVID, maybe, this would be shocking to me to see because I can't see how it could possibly work, to roll out some kind of UBI, universal basic income. I don't see how that can possibly work economically yet. That UBI can only work if we get super advanced AI that's actually going to make all our money for us in some magical way and give all the money to people. I don't even see how that can work. And I don't even think I would like that kind of a world anyway. But what is happening is that powerful interests are going to be jumping on COVID to promote their agenda. No question. And 5G, even more than vaccinations, I would say, is probably the single most important part of that agenda. And rolling out 5G terrifies me, And I don't know how we're going to stop it. I don't know how to stop 5G.
I don't think there is. And that's what someone's comment was earlier. And I apologize. It was a long time ago, but there is no way to stop it. There is no testing happening. I know there was this video circulating around.
Of what?
Gosh, I remember I showed it to you, and it was a panel, and someone was being asked if there was any testing done for the safety of people, and the answer was a no.
It was actually a U.S.
No.
It was a congressional inquiry into 5G, I believe.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was an admission by the companies rolling this out that there's no testing, biological testing that they could really do anyway. So they're not doing it. So you got the physical health issues, which are significant. And then you've got the whole privacy issue, which to me is so tangible, is so obvious, and so terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the health issues, I know.
The only thing that we can do in the Western world, I need some water here.
We're really running
The only
tonight,
thing
guys.
that we can do, is try to get laws passed, privacy laws, that are relevant in the face of a 5G onslaught. Because we're not going to stop NSA or any of these other agencies from getting into your bedroom. Yeah, good luck with that. We're not going to stop them getting into your living room. You're not going to stop them from getting into your freaking toaster and your refrigerator and your toilet. They're going to get into all of those things because they're going to have smart devices monitoring you, all of your energy consumption, all of that. It's all going to be monitored. And and consider, all right, because everything that you do will be totally monitored, plus all the GPS, where you go, what you shop for, what you buy, all of this, your email, it's all going somewhere now. And consider the algorithms that are now capable of being created that can take all of that data and come up with a psychological profile of you that would get you better than you know yourself. Because they can do that. That's all possible. All right. And with 5G, it's just going to be exponential even beyond. So the point is, in that environment, we are absolutely vulnerable in every way, shape, or form. And the only defense that Western people have, because forget China, they're a lost cause. They're done. The only thing that Western people can do is pass laws that protect citizens from undue invasion of privacy, because the capability is going to be there. We have to have a legal foundation to protect us. That's it. That's the only thing we got. And you got to ask yourself, how long is that going to last? Until the next big crisis, the next big whatever it's going to be. False flag or just a case of opportunism, it almost doesn't matter. So in the case of China, China is actually the model that every country, every government wants to be. China is the perfect model of totalitarian control. They have perfected it beyond any other society. It's actually a genius of totalitarian control, what they've done. And how many years behind them are we? 10, 20? I don't know. You know, we have a different culture with a different history, and there's more resistance to that. But in the long run, how long we're going to avoid it is really an open question. So what we have to do is we've got to have a legal foundation that's meaningful, that's actually meaningful, and that will provide some measure of protection, not just to us, but to our children and grandchildren. Because you know what? There's a world now, and there's going to be a world 50 years from now. What's that going to look like?
Right. Yeah. Hey, Aether, I just want to give you a shout out. You're always so kind to us and so generous.
Thank you.
I just want to thank
Thanks
you.
Thank you to
everyone. Okay, someone just said, CT guitar guy said, positive thoughts before bedtime, please.
Okay.
Rich tells good bedtime stories.
I'll tell one, and then we're out. Yes, there's a lot of horrible, terrible, shitty things going on in this world. Okay, we can acknowledge that. But, you know, the most important space in this world is the space between our ears and what goes on in our mind and what we are able to do with this world of ours and with others. One of my favorite people that I've read for my entire life is the Roman Emperor, Marcus Aurelius. I love Marcus Aurelius. He is my ultimate bro. And, you know, what you learn from him. And I would encourage everyone to know his meditations. I'm serious. There are all kinds of contemporary good translations out there now. Don't get the old free one, which sucks. It's like 19th century, terrible. Get something from the 20th century. But what you learn with someone like Marcus Aurelius is the whole world around you, just like I was saying with Zen, can be crashing and burning around you. And guess what? You can't really control most of that stuff. Like, you really can't control any of it. It just happens. There's one thing you control, and that is yourself and your reactions and your thoughts. And in Marcus Aurelius's formulation of it, he recognized the divinity within himself that connected him to the universe, to God, and to other people. And that's really what you do. Like, you can control how you react in this world. And that's, honestly, we will talk about empowerment. That's the ultimate empowering statement, is you can control your reactions to the situation in which you find yourself. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to be like, woe is me. Wow, everyone takes terrible advantage of me. You don't have to cry and complain. You don't have to act out in anger at other people either. You can be the one who makes it better. You can be the one who makes yourself better, even in a horrible crisis, which is what this is. You can rise to the occasion, and you can find strength inside yourself that you didn't know you had. And then the great thing about that is when you find that strength, like, you actually become better and you become stronger and you become braver. And then you have that effect on other people around you. It's actually true. So, yeah. Well, don't thank me. Thank Marcus Aurelius.
I want to show you. Look at what Kirsten wrote. Chat Dad. So if you guys weren't around, when was that? That was for Kathleen Martin's, the interview you did with Kathleen Martin that we did as a premiere. Yeah. So I'll just tell you a funny little story. So, when you do a premiere, the reason why we do that, we can have Richard in chat. So we try to let you know when we're doing that. So Richard was in chat, and he, as you know, he doesn't do this very often. It's
I'm not a chat expert.
So he doesn't know really how chat works, what the chat sort of climate is.
Yeah, it's like no one pays attention to what's going on. You're all talking to each other. I'm like, wait a second. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Right. So Kirsten and I are laughing to ourselves because Richard just is telling people, pay attention to this part.
In full caps.
And he doesn't want to, and I'm egging him. I'm like, talk to them, say hi. Sometimes people will interact in chat, as we do, right? It's hard sometimes to go back and forth. You miss little pieces, but there's kind of a family that's come together here in chat. Right. It interestingly has become this time where a lot of us are getting to know each other. A lot of you recognize each other. I recognize all of you, and
you're building a community.
It is a community, and we're all here together. We all have these common interests. It's kind of
they're all defending it too. It's like we can have two conversations at once. I'm seeing this a lot here.
But anyhow, Kirsten called him Chat Dad. He was the Chat Dad, telling everyone, pay attention.
I was a little bit like that, I admit. I had to learn the ways of the chat.
Yeah.
I had to learn the ways of the chat.
So if we do that again, just know Richard will be in chat, and you can hang out with him and try and distract him.
All right.
So anyhow,
all right. I think we're wrapping everything up here now, though. I do think it's time.
We are. We took him for a good run, you guys.
Glad we did this.
Yeah.
Glad we did the AMA.
It was really fun. It was really fun to be here with all of you. And the comments were amazing. I mean, they run so fast, and I can only tell him a few things, as you know.
If we did not get to your question, I'm sorry, but obviously we did what we could do.
Yeah, there's so many. Noodles, bigger mustache, please.
Everyone, big. Oh, wow. Yeah, it is. It looks a little mustachy here. It's true.
I'm chat challenged.
All right.
I know. Me too. It's not easy going back and forth. Alistair, you're hilarious. And yes, I would like you to come from the UK and hang up these paintings of mine back here. That would be awesome.
Oh, very good. Everyone, thank you so much. It's been real. And I don't know how YouTube is when the thing goes more than 2 hours. I think initially
but
the experience is that it only looks like it's 2 hours, but then after a couple of hours pass, they show you the whole video is available. So I think that will be the case.
Hi, Aine. I just want to thank you for she did a mini swear jar. People were doing swear jar super chats. They were hilarious.
All right. Wow.
I mean, it was really fun. I just have to say it was really fun. I mean, look at what's going on in the world, and here we're having our own little bubble world.
Well, we're all stuck here.
Having a nice time. I know, but it's nice to be together in this way, right?
It's been fun.
So
thank you, everyone. Thanks for putting up with my rants. I get off a little bit, and yeah, okay, good. Well,
let's
keep
hang
it going
tight through this
till I become boring, and then as long as I'm not boring, then it's all
You're
good.
not boring. Are you kidding me?
Great.
It's not boring, right?
Everyone, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure.
Yep.
And stay safe, stay healthy. Let's not make it worse. Let's make it better. How about that?
We'll be thinking of all of you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.